Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This is Wednesday, February 5th, 2026, and we need to have a serious conversation about what Environment Canada is monitoring for this upcoming weekend, because there's a substantial storm system taking shape that's going to bring significant impacts to Atlantic Canada and portions of Ontario, and meteorological agencies are already positioning themselves to issue warnings and advisories as we move closer to this event. I've been digging deep into the latest model runs and data streams coming out of Environment Canada's forecast centres. And what we're observing is a developing low-pressure system that's going to make its presence felt beginning late Friday evening and continuing straight through into Sunday morning, delivering a complex mix of heavy precipitation, powerful winds, and depending on your exact location, either significant snowfall accumulations or dangerous freezing rain, or a transition between multiple precipitation types that's going to make this particularly challenging to navigate. The synoptic setup here is textbook for major Eastern Canadian winter storms, and understanding the atmospheric mechanics at play really helps explain why forecasters are taking this system so seriously. We've got a deep upper-level trough that's currently positioned over the western provinces, and this feature is going to dive southeastward across the prairies over the next 48 hours, before ejecting rapidly eastward across Ontario and Quebec Friday night into Saturday. As this upper-level energy moves across the Great Lakes region, it's going to encounter abundant moisture that's streaming northward from the Atlantic Ocean. And when you get that collision between Arctic continental air masses and warm, moist maritime air, you create the perfect environment for explosive storm development. Environment Canada's latest guidance from their early morning model runs shows remarkable consistency in depicting a surface low-pressure centre that intensifies rapidly. We're talking about a system that could achieve central pressures dropping to 990 millibars, or potentially even lower at peak intensity, Saturday afternoon and evening. And when you see pressures that low, you know you're dealing with a powerful cyclone that's going to generate significant weather across a broad geographic area. Now let's get into the regional breakdown, because the devil is really in the details with this system. And what you experience is going to depend heavily on where you're located relative to that storm track and where you sit in relation to the critical freezing line. Eastern Ontario is going to see the opening act of this weather event, with communities from Ottawa eastward through Kingston and extending toward the Quebec border positioned to receive the initial impacts Friday evening. The latest snowfall projections from Environment Canada suggest accumulations in the 15 to 25 centimetre range for much of eastern Ontario, with the snow beginning around early evening Friday and intensifying significantly overnight into Saturday morning. But here's where it gets complicated. As we move through Saturday morning and into the afternoon hours, warmer air aloft is going to work its way westward into the region, and that's going to trigger a transition from snow to freezing rain, and eventually to plain rain for many areas. That transition period is extremely dangerous from a travel perspective, because you're going from snow-packed roads to ice-glazed surfaces. And Environment Canada is already flagging Saturday morning's commute as a time when travel could become genuinely hazardous across the region. Quebec presents an even more complex forecast challenge, because the temperature profile through the atmosphere is going to be critically important in determining what type of precipitation falls. Southern Quebec, including the Montreal metro area, the Montérégie region, and communities in the eastern townships, you're sitting right in that zone where we could see significant freezing rain develop. The current thinking has snow beginning across southern Quebec in the pre-dawn hours Saturday morning, with perhaps 5 to 10 centimetres accumulating before the transition to freezing rain occurs during the mid-morning to early afternoon timeframe. The ice accretion forecasts are concerning. We're looking at potential ice build-up in the range of 5 to 10 millimetres, and in some localised areas where conditions align perfectly, we could even see amounts approaching 15 millimetres. Let me be absolutely clear about what that means. Ice accumulations in that range have the capacity to snap tree branches, bring down power lines, and cause widespread electrical outages that could persist for extended periods. Quebec City and areas further north are going to stay cold enough that this remains predominantly a snow event, with total accumulations potentially reaching 25 to 35 centimetres before the system begins pulling away Sunday morning. Atlantic Canada is where this storm system really demonstrates its full power as it tracks across the Gulf of St. Lawrence and undergoes its most intense phase of development. New Brunswick faces a particularly challenging forecast because the province is going to experience dramatically different conditions depending on whether you're in the northern or southern portions. Northern New Brunswick, encompassing the Acadian Peninsula, the Restigouche region, and communities around Bathurst, Campbellton, and Edmundston. You're looking at what's shaping up to be a significant snowstorm, with total accumulations that could reach 30 to 40 centimetres by the time the system exits the region Sunday morning. Those are substantial snowfall totals that are going to create major disruptions to transportation networks and could overwhelm municipal snow removal capacity, given the rate at which snow is expected to fall during the peak of the storm. Southern New Brunswick tells a very different story. Communities including St. John, Moncton, Fredericton, and the entire Fundy coastal region are positioned in that problematic transition zone where you're going to experience multiple precipitation types in sequence. The current forecast scenario has snow developing Saturday morning and accumulating through the late morning hours, then transitioning to ice pellets during the early afternoon, followed by freezing rain during the mid to late afternoon, and finally changing over to rain Saturday evening as the warm sector of the system fully engulfs the region. Prince Edward Island's forecast is complicated by the fact that the island sits right along that critical thermal boundary, and small shifts in the storm track or slight temperature variations could significantly alter what you experience. The current expectation is for snow to develop across PEI Saturday morning, with accumulations in the 10 to 15 centimetre range before a transition to rain occurs Saturday afternoon or early evening. Charlottetown specifically could see that transition happen around mid-afternoon, with rainfall amounts after the changeover potentially adding another 20 to 30 millimetres of liquid precipitation. The challenge for Prince Edward Island isn't just the precipitation itself, but the rapid temperature fluctuations that are forecast. We're talking about going from several degrees below freezing Saturday morning to potentially 3 or 4 degrees above freezing Saturday evening. And then temperatures are expected to plummet again as Arctic air rushes back in behind the system Sunday, which creates the very real possibility of flash freezing conditions where any standing water or residual moisture on roadways instantly turns to ice. Nova Scotia is going to experience this storm's full maritime character. And while precipitation is certainly part of the story, the wind forecast is what's really grabbing attention. Mainland Nova Scotia is looking at snowfall that could accumulate to 15 to 25 centimetres during Saturday before transitioning to rain Saturday evening, with an additional 15 to 25 millimetres of rainfall before precipitation tapers off Sunday morning. But it's the wind that's the headline for Nova Scotia. Environment. Canada's wind forecasts are showing sustained winds reaching 60 to 80 kilometres per hour, with gusts that could exceed 100 kilometres per hour along exposed coastal areas Saturday night into Sunday morning. These are wind speeds with the potential to cause structural damage, bring down trees and power lines, and create extremely hazardous driving conditions, particularly on exposed highways, causeways, and bridge crossings. Cape Breton Island is positioned to receive the highest snowfall totals in Nova Scotia, with the Highlands potentially seeing 25 to 40 centimetres before any transition occurs, and when you combine those snow amounts with the forecast wind speeds, you're looking at blizzard conditions with near zero visibility in blowing snow across elevated terrain Saturday afternoon and evening. Newfoundland catches the back edge of this system as it moves northeastward into the Labrador Sea, with Western Newfoundland seeing the most significant impacts. The Wreckhouse area and the Long Range Mountains corridor have a well-deserved reputation for extreme winds, and current forecasts suggest gusts could exceed 120 kilometres per hour Sunday morning, which would make travel along the Trans-Canada Highway through that region extremely dangerous or potentially impossible. Western Newfoundland is also looking at snowfall in the 15 to 25 centimetre range, while the Avalon Peninsula and eastern portions of the island will see more limited impacts as the storm centre tracks well to the north. The timeline for this event is crucial for planning purposes, so let me walk through this hour by hour in the areas where timing is most critical. Friday evening, around 6 p.m. Eastern Time, marks the beginning of snowfall across eastern Ontario, with Ottawa, Brockville and Kingston seeing the first flakes. By 11 p.m. Friday night, snow is falling steadily across all of eastern Ontario and beginning to push into western Quebec. By 3 a.m. Saturday morning, snow has spread across southern Quebec and is just beginning to reach western New Brunswick. Between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. Saturday morning, and this is when the system really ramps up in intensity. Eastern Ontario is experiencing heavy snow with visibility dropping significantly. Southern Quebec is seeing snow rates of 2 to 3 centimetres per hour, and New Brunswick is seeing snow spread rapidly across the entire province. Between 9 a.m. and noon Saturday, the complexity increases dramatically. Eastern Ontario begins transitioning to freezing rain. Southern Quebec, including Montreal, enters that critical freezing rain phase, and New Brunswick's snowfall intensifies to peak rates. Saturday afternoon, from noon to 6 p.m, represents the most dangerous period across the affected regions. Southern Quebec is dealing with ongoing freezing rain and ice accumulation. Northern New Brunswick continues with heavy snow, while southern areas begin mixing with ice pellets and freezing rain. Nova Scotia sees snow spreading eastward across the province, and Prince Edward Island is in the midst of heavy snow. Saturday evening and overnight is when Nova Scotia and southern New Brunswick transition to rain, and the wind becomes the dominant story, with sustained gale-force winds developing across all coastal sections of Atlantic Canada, and gusts reaching storm force along exposed shorelines. Safety preparedness for this event needs to be taken seriously, and I want to provide specific, actionable guidance for different scenarios you might face. For travel, Environment Canada will be issuing travel advisories and potentially travel not recommended statements, and these aren't suggestions, they're warnings based on meteorological data that indicates conditions where travel becomes genuinely dangerous. If your travel plans for Saturday are discretionary, postpone them. If you absolutely must travel, your vehicle preparation needs to include a full fuel tank, a winter survival kit with blankets, candles, matches, flashlight with extra batteries, first aid supplies, non-perishable food items, bottled water, a portable phone charger, an ice scraper and snow brush, sand or kitty litter for traction, and a small shovel. Inform someone of your route and expected arrival time, and build in significantly more travel time than you would normally require. For residents in the freezing rain zones, particularly southern Quebec and portions of New Brunswick, power outage preparation should be your priority. Charge all electronic devices to full capacity Friday afternoon. Fill bathtubs and containers with water in case power loss affects your water supply. Ensure you have adequate flashlights and battery-powered or hand-crank radios. And if you use electric heating as your primary heat source, have a backup plan, whether that means staying elsewhere or having adequate blankets and warm clothing to shelter safely in place. Never use generators indoors or in attached garages due to carbon monoxide risk. For coastal residents, particularly in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, securing loose objects is critical. Anything that wind can catch and turn into a projectile needs to be brought indoors or secured with proper tie-downs, and this includes patio furniture, garbage containers, children's toys, decorative items, and seasonal decorations. Historical context helps us understand the significance of what we're facing. February storms along this particular track, from the Great Lakes through the Gulf of St. Lawrence, have produced some of the most impactful winter weather events in eastern Canadian history. The combination of heavy snow, freezing rain, and powerful winds affecting such a broad area simultaneously isn't an everyday occurrence, though it's certainly not unprecedented for early February. What makes this system particularly noteworthy from a meteorological perspective is the forecast central pressure. Systems that achieve pressures of 990 millibars or lower are significant cyclones. And while we've certainly seen more intense storms with pressures dropping into the mid-900s and 70s, any system in this pressure range commands respect and attention from forecasters and the public alike. Looking at specific cities, Ottawa residents should expect snow beginning around 7 p.m. Friday, accumulating rapidly overnight to reach 15 to 20 centimetres by Saturday morning, continuing through late morning to potentially reach 25 centimetres total, then transitioning to freezing rain Saturday afternoon, with ice accumulation of 3 to 5 millimetres before changing to rain Saturday evening. Montreal faces a particularly concerning forecast with snow beginning around midnight Friday, accumulating 5 to 10 centimetres by Saturday morning, then transitioning to freezing rain between 9 a.m. and noon Saturday, and continuing through the afternoon with ice accretion potentially reaching 8 to 12 millimetres. That's enough ice to cause widespread tree damage and power outages. Quebec City stays colder and therefore stays predominantly snow, with accumulations of 25 to 35 centimetres likely by Saturday evening. St. John sees the full range of winter precipitation types compressed into 24 hours. Snow beginning around 6 a.m. Saturday and accumulating 10 to 15 centimetres by early afternoon, mixing with ice pellets and freezing rain mid-afternoon, transitioning to rain Saturday evening with an additional 10 to 15 millimetres of rain, and winds increasing to 60 to 80 kilometres per hour overnight with coastal gusts to 100 kilometres per hour. Halifax's main story is wind alongside precipitation, Snow beginning around 9 a.m. Saturday and accumulating 15 to 20 centimetres by late afternoon, transitioning to rain Saturday evening with an additional 15 to 20 millimetres, but sustained winds of 70 to 90 kilometres per hour, with gusts exceeding 110 kilometres per hour along the coast Saturday night, making this a potentially damaging wind event. Forecast uncertainty needs to be acknowledged because meteorology deals in probabilities and ranges rather than certainties. We have high confidence in the overall storm track and general timing. A significant weather system will impact these regions this weekend. The uncertainty lies in those critical details, like the exact position of the rain-snow boundary and the precise timing of precipitation-type transitions. A storm track shift of 50 kilometres or a temperature variation of just 2 degrees can be the difference between 30 centimetres of snow and a sloppy mix of precipitation types. Environment. Canada's ensemble forecasting systems run multiple scenarios with slightly varied initial conditions. And while these show good agreement on the broad strokes, they're spread in the specifics, which is why forecasts present ranges rather than single values. Friday's forecast updates will provide increasingly refined detail as we get closer to the event. Staying informed throughout this event is absolutely critical. Environment Canada updates forecasts multiple times daily, and as new observational data becomes available and models are rerun with that data, forecast details can and do change. Warnings get upgraded in severity, impact areas shift, and timing gets refined. Check Environment Canada's official website regularly, use their WeatherCan mobile application for location-specific alerts, and follow their official social media channels. Provincial emergency management organisations will also provide information through their communication channels about any specific preparedness recommendations they're implementing. This storm will affect millions of people across eastern Canada, and information is your best defence against weather impacts. If this detailed breakdown has been valuable for your planning, subscribe to the channel because I'll be back Friday evening with an updated analysis incorporating the latest model runs and refined forecasts for Saturday. Hit that notification bell so you're alerted when that update posts. Stay safe this weekend, everyone. Take these forecasts seriously. Use the time you have now to prepare, and we'll navigate this system together. I'll see you in Friday's update.